In the small, quiet town of Pine Ridge, nestled between rolling hills and dense forests, there stood a diner that had been part of the community for decades. The Black Bear Diner wasn't fancy. It had chipped paint on its walls, mismatched, chairs and a flickering neon sign outside, but it was a place where everyone felt welcome. Owned by Marcus Reed, a kind-hearted man in his early 40s, the diner was more than just a business. It was a legacy passed down from his grandfather. Marcus was one of the few black residents in Pine Ridge, a fact that had shaped much of his life. Growing up, he often heard whispers about how his family didn't quite fit in this predominantly white town. But Marcus never let those comments define him. Instead, he poured his energy into running the diner with warmth and integrity, determined to prove that kindness could bridge any gap. Over the years, he earned the respect of most townsfolk, though there were still some who kept their distance. Despite this, Marcus remained steadfast in his belief that people were fundamentally good if given a chance. One bitterly cold winter evening, as snow began to fall thick and fast, Marcus stayed late at the diner to finish cleaning up. It was already past closing time, but he liked to make sure everything was spotless before heading home. Outside, the wind howled like a restless animal, and the snowflakes danced wildly in the air. The streets were deserted, blanketed in white, and the only sound came from the creaking branches of nearby trees struggling under the weight of the storm. Just as Marcus turned off the last light and reached for his coat, he heard something unusual, a faint siren wailing in the distance. At first he thought it might be his imagination playing tricks on him, but then the noise grew louder, cutting through the roar of the blizzard. Stepping cautiously onto the icy sidewalk, he squinted into the swirling snow. Through the haze, he spotted an ambulance partially stuck on the side of the road near the diner's parking lot. Its tires spun uselessly on the slick pavement, unable to gain traction. Without thinking twice, Marcus grabbed a flashlight from behind the counter and hurried outside, his boots crunching against the fresh snow. As he approached the stranded vehicle, he saw two paramedics inside, their faces tense with worry. They rolled down the window, relief washing over them when they saw Marcus standing there. "We're trying to get to the hospital," one of them explained quickly, his breath visible in the freezing air. "There's a patient in critical condition." Marcus nodded, understanding the urgency of the situation. Peering into the back of the ambulance, he saw an elderly woman lying motionless on a stretcher, her face pale and frail. The paramedics explained that they had lost control of the vehicle during the storm and ended up stuck in the snow. With no other cars in sight and the nearest tow truck hours away due to the weather, they were desperate for help. Without hesitation, Marcus sprang into action. "Let's get her inside," he said firmly, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. Together, they carefully lifted the stretcher out of the ambulance and carried the woman into the warmth of the diner. Marcus cleared off a booth, spreading blankets to create a makeshift bed for her. He turned up the heat and brought over a space heater to keep her warm while the paramedics monitored her vital signs. Once the patient was settled, Marcus returned to the kitchen to prepare hot drinks and food. He brewed strong coffee and heated up bowls of hearty chicken soup, knowing the paramedics would need sustenance to stay sharp. When he brought the tray to their table, they looked up at him with gratitude in their eyes. "You didn't have to do all this," one of them said, shaking his head in disbelief. "Thank you," but Marcus waved off their thanks. "It's what anyone would have done," he replied simply, though deep down he knew not everyone would have gone to such lengths. For him, helping others wasn't a choice. It was second nature. Despite getting the patient safely inside, the problem of the stranded ambulance remained. Without it, the paramedics couldn't complete their journey to the hospital. Marcus glanced outside where the storm showed no signs of letting up. He remembered something his grandfather used to say: "When the world feels frozen, grit thaws the ice." Inspired by these words, Marcus headed to the shed behind the diner, retrieving shovels and bags of rock salt. For nearly an hour, he worked tirelessly alongside the paramedics, clearing the snow and spreading salt around the ambulance's tires. His fingers burned from the cold and his muscles ached from the effort, but he refused to give up. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the wheels gained enough traction to pull free. The ambulance roared to life, its headlights cutting through the darkness. As the paramedics prepared to leave, one of them turned to Marcus and said, "We'll never forget this. Thank you for saving us. And our patient." Marcus smiled humbly, watching as the ambulance disappeared into the snowy night. Though exhausted, he felt a deep sense of satisfaction. In that moment, he realized that sometimes, even the smallest acts of kindness can make the biggest difference. Little did Marcus know this act of bravery and compassion would ripple far beyond that snowy evening, touching lives in ways he couldn't yet imagine. The next morning, the blizzard had passed, leaving Pine Ridge cloaked in a pristine blanket of snow. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a soft golden glow over the town. Marcus woke up early, his body still sore from the previous night's efforts. Despite the fatigue, he felt a sense of calm as he brewed himself a cup of coffee and prepared to open the diner. It was Saturday, typically one of the busiest days of the week, but nothing could have prepared him for what awaited outside. Marcus unlocked the front door and flipped the closed sign to open. He froze mid-step. Stretching far down the street, disappearing into the distance, was a line of SUVs waiting patiently outside the diner. At first, he thought it might be some kind of traffic jam or a misunderstanding. But as he stepped onto the icy sidewalk, curiosity getting the better of him, he realized something extraordinary was happening. "Good morning," Marcus called out to the driver of the first car, a red Jeep parked closest to the diner. The window rolled down, revealing a middle-aged woman bundled in a thick scarf and gloves. She smiled warmly at Marcus. "We heard about what you did last night," she said, her voice tinged with admiration. "Helping that ambulance crew during the storm, you're a hero." Marcus blinked in surprise. "A hero? No, I just did what anyone would have done," he stammered, feeling a mix of embarrassment and gratitude. But the woman shook her head firmly. "Not everyone would have done what you did. That's why we're here, to show our support." It turned out that someone had witnessed the entire scene the night before. A local teenager who happened to be driving home when the ambulance got stuck. They snapped a photo of Marcus shoveling snow around the vehicle and posted it online, along with a brief description of how he'd helped save the stranded paramedics and their patient. Within hours, the story had gone viral, not just in Pine Ridge but across neighboring towns and even on social media platforms. People were inspired by Marcus's selflessness, and many decided to visit the Black Bear Diner to thank him personally. Word traveled fast, and by noon, the diner was packed beyond capacity. Customers flowed in steadily, filling every available seat and spilling into the small waiting area near the entrance. Some came bearing gifts, homemade pies, jars of pickles, loaves of fresh bread, all tokens of appreciation for Marcus's kindness. Others simply wanted to share a meal at the diner, eager to experience firsthand the warmth and hospitality that had become synonymous with its name. Inside, the atmosphere buzzed with energy. Strangers introduced themselves to one another, sharing stories about why they had come. A young mother told Marcus how his actions reminded her of her late father, who always went out of his way to help those in need. An elderly man sitting at the counter handed Marcus a folded $20 bill, insisting it was a donation to keep the diner running. "Places like this are rare these days," he said gruffly, though his eyes softened as he added, "You're doing something special here." Even the sheriff stopped by, removing his hat as he entered the diner. He approached Marcus with an extended hand and a sincere smile. "You've done our town proud," he said. "If you ever need anything, extra security help during busy times, you let me know. We've got your back." Marcus thanked him, touched by the gesture, though he couldn't shake the feeling that he didn't deserve all this attention. Throughout the day, Marcus worked tirelessly alongside his staff, ensuring every customer felt welcomed and cared for. Plates clattered, laughter filled the air, and the smell of sizzling bacon wafted through the room. Despite the chaos, Marcus found himself smiling more than he had in years. Each interaction brought a new story, a new connection, and a renewed sense of purpose. For the first time in a long while, he felt truly seen. not as the black diner owner or the outsider, but as Marcus Reed, a man whose simple act of kindness had sparked something remarkable. As the afternoon wore on, the line of SUVs began to thin, but the impact of the day lingered. One customer, a journalist from a nearby city, asked if she could interview Marcus for a feature article. Though initially hesitant, Marcus agreed, realizing that this was an opportunity to shine a light not just on himself, but on the values he held dear: compassion, community, and resilience. As they spoke, he shared anecdotes about growing up in Pine Ridge, the challenges he faced, and the lessons he learned from his grandfather. By the end of the conversation, the journalist promised to write a piece that captured the essence of who Marcus was and what the diner represented to so many people. That evening, as Marcus locked up the diner and turned off the neon sign, he paused to take in the quiet stillness of the town. Snow sparkled under the dim glow of streetlights, and the world seemed peaceful after the whirlwind of activity. Reflecting on the day's events, he marveled at how quickly life could change. What started as an ordinary act of kindness had transformed into something extraordinary, a testament to the power of human connection. Back at home, Marcus sat by the fireplace, nursing a cup of tea. His mind wandered to the faces he'd seen today, the smiles, the tears, the heartfelt words of gratitude. He thought about the young mother, the elderly man, and even the sheriff, each leaving an indelible mark on his heart. For years, Marcus had wondered if he truly belonged in Pine Ridge. But now, surrounded by the love and support of strangers turned friends, he knew the answer without a doubt. He belonged here, in this town, among these people. What struck Marcus most wasn't the influx of new customers or the sudden fame. It was the reminder that people craved authenticity. In a world often divided by differences, acts of genuine kindness had the power to unite. And while the diner itself remained unchanged, with its chipped paint and mismatched chairs, its significance had grown exponentially. It was no longer just a place to grab a meal. It was a symbol of hope, a beacon of light in times of darkness. As Marcus drifted off to sleep that night, he couldn't help but feel grateful, not just for the success of the diner, but for the reminder that even the smallest gestures could create ripples far beyond what he imagined. The blizzard may have been harsh, but it had also uncovered something beautiful, the strength of a community coming together. And in that moment, Marcus understood that true wealth wasn't measured in dollars or fame. It was measured in the connections we forge and the lives we touch along the way. The days following the blizzard were unlike anything Marcus had ever experienced. The Black Bear Diner, once a quiet corner of Pine Ridge known only to regulars, became the talk of the town and beyond. Word of Marcus's heroics continued to spread, drawing visitors not just from neighboring towns but from cities hours away. People wanted to see for themselves the place where a simple act of kindness had sparked such an outpouring of gratitude. Each morning, as Marcus unlocked the diner's doors, he braced himself for another busy day. The line of SUVs that had formed on that first post-blizzard morning became a daily occurrence. Some customers came simply to eat, while others arrived with stories to share or gifts to give. One elderly couple brought a quilt they had sewn by hand, insisting it hang in the diner as a symbol of warmth and community. Another man, a carpenter by trade, offered to repair the chipped paint and wobbly chairs, refusing payment for his work. "This place means something to all of us now," he said with a grin. "Let me help keep it looking its best." What surprised Marcus most was how quickly the diner transformed into more than just a restaurant. It became a gathering spot, a place where people felt comfortable sharing their joys and struggles. A young woman named Lily, who had recently moved to Pine Ridge, confided in Marcus one afternoon about how lonely she'd been feeling until she heard his story. "It made me realize there are good people here," she admitted shyly. "People like you." Marcus listened patiently, offering words of encouragement before handing her a slice of pie on the house. By the time she left, her smile was brighter than when she walked in. The diner also attracted attention from unexpected places. Local businesses began reaching out to offer support. A grocery store owner delivered crates of fresh produce at a discounted rate, ensuring Marcus could keep up with the increased demand. A bakery sent over trays of muffins and bread every morning, free of charge. Even the high school football team volunteered to shovel snow around the diner during future storms, inspired by Marcus's determination to help others despite the odds. As weeks turned into months, Marcus noticed subtle changes, not just in the diner but in himself. He started waking up earlier, eager to greet each new day with renewed energy. His conversations with customers grew deeper, filled with laughter, advice, and shared memories. He learned about their lives, their dreams, fears, and triumphs, and realized how much they valued having someone listen without judgment. In turn, they taught him the importance of vulnerability, encouraging him to open up about his own struggles growing up in Pine Ridge. One particularly memorable evening, a group of musicians from a nearby town stopped by after hearing about the diner's newfound popularity. They asked if they could perform a few songs in exchange for dinner. Marcus happily agreed, clearing space near the counter so they could set up their instruments. As the soft strumming of guitars and soulful melodies filled the air, the entire diner seemed to pause. Strangers sang along to familiar tunes, clapping and cheering between sets. For those few hours, the weight of everyday worries melted away, replaced by a sense of unity and joy. The music night became a weekly tradition, drawing larger crowds each week. Artists from across the region flocked to the Black Bear Diner, eager to perform in a space that radiated warmth and inclusivity. Marcus loved watching the interactions unfold, how strangers bonded over shared meals and songs, forming connections that might never have happened otherwise. It reinforced his belief that art, like kindness, had the power to bring people together. Despite the overwhelming support, Marcus remained humble. He often reminded himself that none of this would have happened without the community rallying behind him. Still, he couldn't ignore the impact his actions had made, not just on others but on himself. For years, he had carried the weight of being different in a small town, questioning whether he truly belonged. But now, surrounded by people who celebrated his presence, he finally felt at peace. The diner wasn't just a legacy passed down from his grandfather. It was a testament to the values he held dear: hard work, compassion, and resilience. One afternoon, as Marcus flipped pancakes on the griddle, a familiar face walked through the door. It was Sheriff Harris, the same man who had visited during the blizzard. This time, however, he wasn't alone. Beside him stood a tall, silver-haired woman carrying a leather-bound notebook. "Marcus," the sheriff began, gesturing to his companion, "this is Ms. Evelyn Carter. She's a writer working on a book about unsung heroes in small towns. We thought you'd be perfect for her next chapter." Marcus wiped his hands on his apron, feeling both honored and slightly nervous. "Me? A hero?" he chuckled, shaking his head. "I'm just doing what I can to get by." Ms. Carter smiled warmly, her eyes twinkling with admiration. "That's exactly why we're here," she replied. "Heroes aren't always the ones wearing capes. Sometimes they're the people quietly making a difference, one kind act at a time. Your story deserves to be told." Over the next hour, Marcus sat down with Ms. Carter, sharing anecdotes about his life in Pine Ridge. He spoke candidly about the challenges he faced as a black man in a predominantly white town, the lessons he learned from his grandfather, and the moments of doubt that tested his resolve. He recounted the night of the blizzard, describing how instinct took over when he saw the stranded ambulance. And he talked about the ripple effect that followed, the flood of customers, the outpouring of generosity, and the profound sense of belonging he now felt. By the end of their conversation, Ms. Carter promised to write a chapter that captured not just Marcus's story, but the spirit of the diner and the community it served. "You've created something truly special here," she said as she packed up her notebook, "and I want the world to know about it." As the weeks passed, anticipation built around the upcoming book. Locals eagerly awaited its release, proud to see their town featured in such a positive light. Meanwhile, Marcus continued running the diner with the same dedication and care that had earned him so much love. He introduced new menu items inspired by customer suggestions, hosted charity events to raise funds for local causes, and even started a Pay It Forward board where patrons could purchase meals for those in need. Through it all, Marcus never lost sight of what mattered most: the people. Whether it was serving coffee to weary travelers, listening to a stranger's troubles, or simply smiling at someone having a bad day, he understood that every interaction was an opportunity to make a difference. The blizzard may have brought attention to the diner, but it was Marcus's unwavering commitment to kindness that kept people coming back. As winter gave way to spring, the snow melted, revealing green shoots pushing through the soil, a metaphor for the growth Marcus witnessed in himself and his community. The Black Bear Diner stood as a beacon of hope, proof that even in the coldest, darkest times, humanity could shine brightly. And though Marcus knew challenges lay ahead, he faced them with confidence, knowing he wasn't alone. Together, he and his community had weathered the storm and emerged stronger than ever. As spring settled over Pine Ridge, the Black Bear Diner continued to thrive, its reputation now extending far beyond the borders of the small town. The diner had become more than just a place to eat. It was a symbol of resilience, kindness, and unity. Marcus Reed found himself at the center of this transformation, though he still struggled with the idea of being called a hero. To him, the real heroes were the people who showed up every day: his loyal customers, his hardworking staff, and the community that had embraced him so fully. One sunny morning, as Marcus unlocked the diner's doors, he noticed a delivery truck parked outside. Curious, he stepped onto the sidewalk to investigate. A man in a crisp uniform approached him, holding a clipboard. "Mr. Reed?" the man asked, smiling warmly. When Marcus nodded, the man extended his hand. "We're here to install the new equipment you ordered last month." Marcus blinked in surprise. He hadn't placed any orders recently. "I'm sorry," he said, scratching his head. "There must be some mistake. I didn't order anything." The delivery man chuckled and handed Marcus an envelope. "No mistake, sir. Everything's been taken care of." Puzzled, Marcus opened the envelope and pulled out a letter. It was from Ms. Evelyn Carter, the writer who had visited weeks earlier to document his story. In the letter, she explained that after hearing about the diner's struggles to keep up with the growing number of customers, she had reached out to several local businesses for support. Together, they had pooled resources to upgrade the diner's kitchen equipment, including a state-of-the-art griddle, a larger refrigerator, and a commercial-grade coffee machine. Marcus felt tears welling up in his eyes as he read the note. At the bottom, Ms. Carter had written, "You've given so much to this community, now it's our turn to give back." Overwhelmed with gratitude, Marcus thanked the delivery team and watched as they unloaded the shiny new appliances. By the time the installation was complete, word had spread among the early morning crowd and customers gathered around to admire the upgrades. Everyone cheered when Marcus flipped the first pancake on the new griddle, declaring it the best pancake ever made. The generosity didn't stop there. Inspired by the diner's story, a local artist offered to paint a mural on the side of the building. She spent weeks sketching designs incorporating elements that represented the town's history, Marcus's family legacy, and the spirit of compassion that defined the diner. When the mural was finally unveiled, it became an instant landmark. Tourists began stopping by just to take photos, further boosting the diner's popularity. Marcus couldn't help but smile whenever he saw families posing in front of the vibrant artwork, their faces glowing with happiness. Despite the newfound fame, Marcus remained grounded. He knew that success wasn't measured by accolades or profits, but by the impact he had on others. Every day he made it a point to check in with his regulars, asking about their lives and offering words of encouragement when needed. One customer, a single mother named Sarah, often brought her young son to the diner for breakfast. Marcus noticed how tired she looked one morning and gently urged her to sit down while he prepared her meal. "You look like you could use a break," he said kindly. That simple act of kindness meant the world to Sarah, who later wrote a heartfelt review online, praising Marcus for his thoughtfulness. The diner also became a hub for charitable efforts. Marcus organized monthly fundraisers, donating a portion of the proceeds to local causes such as food banks, schools, and shelters. On one occasion, he hosted a community cook-off, inviting residents to showcase their culinary skills. The event drew hundreds of participants and spectators, raising thousands of dollars for a nearby hospital, the same hospital where the elderly woman from the blizzard had been treated. When the paramedics who had been stranded that night attended the cook-off, they presented Marcus with a plaque honoring his bravery and selflessness. "You saved more than just our patient that night," one of them said. "You reminded us all what it means to care." Amidst the whirlwind of activity, Marcus took time to reflect on how far he'd come. Growing up in Pine Ridge, he had often felt like an outsider, unsure if he truly belonged. But the events of the past few months had changed everything. People no longer saw him as the black diner owner or the outsider. They saw him as Marcus, a friend, a neighbor, and a pillar of the community. Even those who had once kept their distance now greeted him warmly, eager to share stories or express their appreciation. One evening, as Marcus closed up shop, he noticed a familiar figure standing across the street. It was Mr. Thompson, a retired farmer who had lived in Pine Ridge for decades. For years, Mr. Thompson had been one of the few townsfolk who rarely visited the diner, always giving vague excuses whenever Marcus invited him. Tonight, however, he crossed the road and approached Marcus hesitantly. "Can we talk for a moment?" Mr. Thompson asked, his voice tinged with nervousness. Marcus nodded and gestured toward the diner's empty booths. Once they were seated, Mr. Thompson removed his hat and sighed deeply. "I owe you an apology," he began, his weathered hands trembling slightly. "For years I let my own prejudices get in the way. I avoided your diner because of the color of your skin. But seeing how you've helped this town, how you've brought us all together, it made me realize how wrong I was." Marcus listened quietly, his expression calm but thoughtful. When Mr. Thompson finished speaking, Marcus reached across the table and placed a reassuring hand on the older man's shoulder. "Thank you for saying that," he said softly. "It takes courage to admit when you're wrong, and honestly, I think we've both grown since then. This town has taught me a lot about forgiveness and second chances." Tears glistened in Mr. Thompson's eyes as he nodded. "You're a better man than I'll ever be," he admitted, "but I want to make things right. If you'll have me, I'd like to volunteer my time here, help out however I can." Marcus smiled warmly, accepting the offer without hesitation. From that day forward, Mr. Thompson became a regular fixture at the diner, lending a hand during busy shifts and regaling customers with stories of life on the farm. As the seasons changed, so did the diner and the town itself. The sense of unity that had blossomed during the blizzard continued to grow, fueled by shared experiences and mutual respect. Marcus introduced new traditions to keep the momentum alive, such as hosting annual storytelling nights where locals could share tales of kindness and resilience. These events quickly became beloved fixtures of the community, drawing crowds from far and wide. Through it all, Marcus never forgot the lessons he had learned along the way. He realized that while acts of kindness could inspire change, true progress came from sustained effort and genuine connection. The diner wasn't just a business. It was a living, breathing testament to the power of compassion. And as long as Marcus stood behind the counter, flipping pancakes and pouring coffee, he knew the Black Bear Diner would remain a beacon of hope for Pine Ridge and beyond. By the time summer arrived, the diner had cemented its place not only in the hearts of its patrons but in the fabric of the town itself. What had started as a simple act of helping strangers during a storm had evolved into something extraordinary, a movement that reminded everyone of the goodness that existed in the world. And for Marcus, that was worth more than anything money could buy. As summer rolled into Pine Ridge, the Black Bear Diner became more than just a local landmark. It was now a thriving hub of connection and inspiration. The diner's reputation had grown so much that tourists passing through the region often made detours just to visit. Some came for the food, others for the mural, and many simply to meet Marcus Reed, the man whose kindness had sparked something extraordinary in their small town. One bright July morning, Marcus arrived at the diner earlier than usual. He wanted to prepare for the day ahead, knowing weekends were always busy during the tourist season. As he unlocked the door, he noticed a small crowd already gathered outside. At first, he thought they might be early risers eager for breakfast, but as he approached, he realized something unusual was happening. In the center of the group stood a young girl, no older than 10, clutching a large cardboard sign that read, "Thank you, Mr. Marcus." Curious, Marcus stepped closer. The girl looked up at him with wide, shining eyes. "Hi, Mr. Marcus," she said shyly. "My name is Emily. I heard about what you did last winter, the ambulance and everything, and it inspired me to start helping people too." She gestured to the makeshift lemonade stand beside her, complete with cups and a pitcher filled with freshly squeezed lemonade. "I'm raising money for the animal shelter because I love animals, and I want to help them, like you helped everyone." Marcus felt his heart swell with pride. He knelt down to her level and smiled warmly. "That's amazing, Emily," he said. "You're doing something really special here. Helping others, no matter how big or small the act, makes the world a better place." To show his support, he bought the first cup of lemonade, prompting others in line to follow suit. By noon, Emily had raised enough money to make a significant donation to the shelter, and she beamed with joy as Marcus promised to join her when she delivered the funds later that week. Moments like these became increasingly common. People seemed inspired not only by Marcus's actions but also by the spirit of generosity that permeated the diner. Strangers began paying it forward in creative ways, leaving generous tips for waitstaff, anonymously covering meals for struggling families, or even volunteering their time to help keep the diner running smoothly. One elderly woman started knitting scarves and leaving them on hooks near the entrance for anyone who needed warmth during chilly mornings. Another customer set up a book exchange corner, filling shelves with novels and magazines donated by patrons. The diner's influence extended beyond its walls. Inspired by the sense of community fostered within its cozy confines, residents of Pine Ridge began organizing events to strengthen bonds throughout the town. A weekly farmers market sprang up in the parking lot next to the diner, giving local growers and artisans a platform to showcase their goods. Marcus encouraged the initiative, offering free coffee and snacks to vendors and shoppers alike. The market quickly became a beloved tradition, drawing visitors from neighboring towns and further solidifying the diner's role as a cornerstone of the community. Amidst all the positive changes, Marcus faced challenges too. Running a business that had grown exponentially in such a short time wasn't easy. Supply costs rose, staffing demands increased, and maintaining quality service required constant effort. There were days when Marcus felt overwhelmed, questioning whether he could keep up with the pace. On one particularly stressful afternoon, after dealing with a broken fridge and a delayed delivery, he sat alone in the kitchen, head in his hands. It was then that Sarah, the single mother who frequently brought her son to the diner, walked in. She had seen the frazzled look on Marcus's face earlier and decided to check on him. "Hey," she said softly, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. "You okay?" Marcus sighed deeply. "I don't know, Sarah. Sometimes it feels like I'm trying to hold everything together, but there's just so much to do." Sarah nodded understandingly. "I get that. But you're not alone, Marcus. Look around you. This whole town has your back. We see how hard you work, and we appreciate it more than words can say." She paused, then added with a smile, "And if you ever need a break, my mom's an amazing cook. She'd be happy to cover a shift for you." Her words struck a chord. Marcus realized that while the responsibility rested heavily on his shoulders, he didn't have to carry it alone. Over the next few weeks, he reached out to trusted friends and regulars, asking for help when needed. To his surprise, people eagerly stepped up, whether it was covering shifts, organizing fundraisers, or brainstorming ideas to improve efficiency. Slowly but surely, the weight began to lift. replaced by a renewed sense of teamwork and camaraderie. As autumn approached, bringing crisp air and golden leaves, Marcus decided to host a special event to celebrate the diner's journey over the past year. He called it Gratitude Day, inviting everyone who had supported the diner to come together for a shared meal. Tables were set up outside, stretching across the parking lot, adorned with colorful decorations and lanterns strung overhead. Local musicians provided live entertainment, and volunteers served plates of hearty comfort food prepared by Marcus and his team. The turnout was overwhelming. Hundreds of people attended, from longtime residents to newcomers who had only recently discovered the diner. Speeches were given, stories were shared, and laughter echoed through the evening. When it was Marcus's turn to speak, he stood at the microphone, looking out at the sea of smiling faces. His voice trembled slightly as he began. "I never imagined this would happen," he admitted. "When I stayed late that snowy night to help a stranded ambulance, I wasn't thinking about anything except doing the right thing. But what followed changed my life, and yours, in ways I couldn't have dreamed of. This diner isn't mine anymore, it belongs to all of us. It's proof that kindness, no matter how small, can create ripples that touch countless lives." The crowd erupted into applause, cheering loudly. Later that night, as Marcus watched the festivities wind down, he reflected on how far they'd come. The diner had weathered storms, literal and metaphorical, and emerged stronger than ever. It wasn't just a building or a business. It was a testament to the power of human connection, resilience, and compassion. In the months that followed, the Black Bear Diner continued to evolve. New traditions took root, old friendships deepened, and new ones formed. Marcus remained at the heart of it all, guiding the diner with the same humility and dedication that had earned him so much love. Though challenges still arose, he faced them with confidence, knowing he had an entire community standing beside him. By the time winter returned, blanketing Pine Ridge in fresh snow, the diner felt like home, not just to Marcus but to everyone who crossed its threshold. And as Marcus flipped pancakes on a quiet Sunday morning, watching sunlight stream through frosted windows, he knew one thing for certain. The legacy of the Black Bear Diner wasn't built on burgers and coffee. It was built on the belief that, even in the coldest, darkest times, a single act of kindness could light the way, for one person, for a town, and perhaps for the world. By the time winter returned to Pine Ridge, the Black Bear Diner had firmly established itself as more than just a place to eat. It was a symbol of hope, resilience, and unity. The diner's story had traveled far beyond the borders of the small town, inspiring people across the country. Letters, emails, and even handwritten notes poured in from strangers who had heard about Marcus Reed's act of kindness during the blizzard. Some shared their own stories of helping others. Others expressed gratitude for being reminded of humanity's goodness. One chilly December morning, as Marcus unlocked the diner's doors, he noticed an envelope tucked under the welcome mat. Curious, he picked it up and opened it inside. Inside was a letter written on simple lined paper, its words filled with emotion. "Dear Mr. Reed, I don't know where to begin except to say thank you. Your story reached me at a time when I needed hope the most. I've been struggling with loneliness and doubt, wondering if my efforts to help others mattered. Hearing how your kindness brought people together gave me strength. So today I'm starting small. I'm baking cookies for my neighbors and volunteering at our local shelter. Thank you for reminding me that even tiny acts can make a difference." The letter ended without a name, but it left Marcus deeply moved. He taped it to the wall near the cash register, adding it to a growing collection of notes and letters from people whose lives had been touched by the diner's story. Over time, this wall of gratitude became a cherished feature of the diner, drawing smiles and tears from those who read the heartfelt messages. As Christmas approached, the diner buzzed with festive energy. Marcus decorated every inch of the space, twinkling lights wrapped around the counters, garlands strung across the ceiling, and a tree adorned with ornaments donated by customers. For weeks leading up to the holiday, patrons brought gifts for families in need, piling them under the tree until it nearly disappeared beneath the colorful packages. On Christmas Eve, Marcus hosted a special dinner for anyone who wanted to join, free of charge. Tables were packed with laughter, music, and the aroma of roasted turkey and freshly baked pies. Among the guests that evening was Ms. Evelyn Carter, the writer who had documented Marcus's story earlier in the year. She arrived carrying a copy of her newly published book, Unsung Heroes, Stories of Quiet Courage. Her eyes sparkled as she handed it to Marcus. "You're the first chapter," she said proudly. "I hope it does justice to everything you've done." Marcus flipped through the pages, his heart swelling with emotion. The chapter about him wasn't just about the night of the blizzard. It captured the essence of the diner, the community, and the ripple effect of kindness. Photos of the mural, the wall of gratitude, and smiling faces filled the glossy pages. When he looked up at Ms. Carter, he could only manage a quiet, "Thank you." The following week, copies of the book appeared on shelves nationwide. Within days, media outlets began reaching out, eager to interview Marcus and learn more about the diner. A local TV station aired a segment featuring interviews with customers, staff, and residents of Pine Ridge, all speaking passionately about the impact Marcus had made. The piece ended with footage of Marcus flipping pancakes while humming along to a song playing softly in the background, a moment so ordinary yet profoundly meaningful. Despite the attention, Marcus remained steadfast in his commitment to staying humble. He often reminded himself and others that the real heroes were the people who showed up every day, whether it was to lend a hand, share a meal, or simply offer a kind word. "Kindness isn't something you do alone," he would say during interviews. "It's something we create together." In February, as snow blanketed Pine Ridge once again, Marcus decided to honor the anniversary of the blizzard by hosting what he called a night of reflection. He invited everyone who had been part of the journey, the paramedics, the stranded ambulance crew, regular customers, volunteers, and even critics turned supporters, to gather at the diner. Candles flickered softly on each table, casting a warm glow over the room. Marcus stood at the front holding a microphone. "I want to start by saying thank you," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "To every single person here tonight, and to those who couldn't be. You've shown me that no matter how cold or dark things may seem, there's always light waiting to break through. That night taught me something important. Grit matters, yes, but heart keeps us going. And it's your hearts that have kept this place alive." He paused, scanning the room. Tears glistened in the eyes of many, including his own. "So let's keep going. Let's keep showing up for each other. Not because it's easy, but because it's worth it. Because every act of kindness creates a ripple, and those ripples can change the world." The room erupted into applause, followed by cheers and whistles. Afterward, people lingered long into the night, sharing stories and laughter. It was clear that the bonds formed over the past year weren't fleeting. They were enduring connections forged through shared experiences and mutual respect. As the months passed, the Black Bear Diner continued to thrive, evolving in ways Marcus never imagined. Local schools began organizing field trips to teach students about compassion and community service. Businesses sought advice from Marcus on fostering inclusive environments. Even tourists passing through stopped not just for a meal, but to leave behind tokens of appreciation, letters, artwork, or donations to the diner's Pay It Forward board. Marcus also found personal growth in unexpected places. He reconnected with distant relatives who had seen his story online, reigniting relationships he thought were lost forever. He started mentoring young entrepreneurs in Pine Ridge, offering guidance based on his own experiences. And though he still faced challenges, supply shortages, staffing issues, and the occasional bad day, he tackled them with renewed confidence, knowing he wasn't alone. One crisp spring morning, as Marcus prepared to open the diner, he stepped outside and took a deep breath. The air smelled of fresh earth and blooming flowers. Across the street, children played tag, their laughter echoing through the quiet neighborhood. For a moment, he allowed himself to reflect on how much had changed since that snowy night a year ago. The diner wasn't perfect. It still had chipped paint and mismatched chairs, but it didn't need to be. Its imperfections were part of its charm, just as the struggles of the past had shaped its present. What mattered most was the spirit within its walls, a spirit of kindness, connection, and hope. Marcus smiled as he unlocked the door and flipped the sign to open. Inside, the coffee pot bubbled, ready to greet the day's first customers. As sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the wall of gratitude and the vibrant mural outside, Marcus knew one thing for certain. The Black Bear Diner wasn't just a building, it was a living testament to the belief that even in the toughest times, humanity could shine brightly. And as long as there were people willing to extend a hand, that light would never fade. For Marcus Reed, the journey had been challenging, humbling, and rewarding beyond measure. But above all, it had reinforced a truth he'd always known deep down. Kindness, no matter how small, could spark a chain reaction capable of transforming lives, including his own.